Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you're here. Y'all, in this video, I'm gonna give you the top 12 things you need to be doing in the month of June in your garden. This is your June garden to-do list video. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you're new, my name is Barbara. I live in Tennessee, which is in zone 7B, but this to-do list is for everybody, no matter what zone that you're in. I'm giving you a list of things that you need to be focused on in the month of June. June is a month where we need to be maintaining the garden. For a lot of us, we've already planted our summer gardens, but June is the month where we start to maintain the garden so that we can produce a lot of yummy, good food for our families. So if you're like me, sometimes the to-do list, all the time, the to-do list is so long that I find myself sometimes thinking, I don't even know where to begin. And so that's why each month I kind of write down what my to-do list is, and I kind of break it up by week so that I have like a focus or a starting point. And I thought that this will be helpful for you. I've been sharing my monthly to-do list for the last, I think, 6 months, and you guys have enjoyed it. Basically, y'all, I'm just giving you a peek into my brain and how I kind of operate on my farm with a to-do list. And as you watch my videos throughout the month of June, you'll just really see me doing my to-do list, right? But I want to kind of go through the top 12 things that I want you to be focused on in the month of June in your garden. Okay, guys, if you've been following me for the last few weeks or so, you know that we are in the midst of a 40-day and 40 nights rain situation. It has been raining every day for the last 12 days, and we have, I think, 3 more days that is forecasted. And even right now, it's hard for me to find a good shot because the sun is kind of out, but it's kind of not. And it's supposed to rain in the next hour or so, but that target has been moving all day long. So I decided just to come out and see what I can get done in the garden. So we'll see if we make it through this video without a rain shower. If not, then we'll just pick up where we left off. But I know that many of you have temperatures in your area where it's still kind of cool. I've talked to some of you that live in more northern states that you are just now getting a chance to plant out your gardens. That I know a lot of you are in a drought. And so here in the South or in Tennessee, especially, we have been in a very, very rainy season in the garden. Okay, so let's start with number one. Number one is I want you to continue to plant your summer crops. Now, for me, I started planting my summer crops around the first or second week of May. And so we have 3 gardening spaces that we do on our homestead. We have a high tunnel that's 30 by 96. I'm standing in our outdoor in-ground garden right now, and then we also have raised beds behind our house. And so all of those are kind of on a different timeline. So we've planted the high tunnel or the greenhouse around the last week of April. We planted this around May, and then the area behind my house we will plant this month in June. So no matter where you're planting at or what your situation is, I want you to keep planting your stuff. If you haven't already planted all your stuff out, then this is the month to do it. And then if you have planted some stuff out and you still have some open spaces, I want you to plug those open spaces with crops. Okay, so that is number one. And so the things that you should be planting this summer are on the summer to-do list: tomatoes, corn, peas, green beans, squash, zucchini, cucumbers. All of those things, your melons, your watermelons, your cantaloupes, all of those things are game to be planting and getting in the ground in June. So that's number one, is making sure that you got every whole field. Because I'm a firm believer that if you have the space, if you have a raised bed, if you have an in-ground space, if you have a pot, you have a container, I believe that it should be full, because the more food, the better. We are living in a time where groceries are high, gas is high, and the food supply is whack. Okay, so I think whatever we can do individually of ourselves to grow as much food as we can for our families, I absolutely 100% I'm always going to recommend that. Okay, so now let's go on to number 2, which is super important, which is succession planting. That is a great time to insert this in the month of June. And I want to spend just a few minutes talking about what succession planting is. Okay, guys, I've had to move to the backyard, and I'm sitting at my bistro table, the set that I have from Vago Garden. And my husband was going to try to cut the grass before it starts raining. And again, I can already feel it sprinkling. So we'll see what happens. Again, y'all, we're in this phase where we just have to kind of do what we have to do, and we're getting outside as soon as it seems clear and running back inside the house when it's raining. Now, of course, back here, he has not cut the grass. It's been raining for 14 days, y'all. So this is the first day he's been able to try to even cut the grass. And again, I don't know how far he'll get, but I decided to come back here to like reduce the amount of noise. So I'm in my backyard, and back here we have 5 raised beds. But let's get back to number 2, which is succession planting. Succession planting is so important, especially for those of you like me who have long growing seasons. So here in Tennessee, our growing season for the summer is about 180 days. And so my estimated first frost ending or my estimated last frost was around April the 20th, and my estimated first frost is around October 20th. So that's about 6 months of summer growing season. So I can grow a lot of stuff, and I can grow multiple successions. So if you're not familiar with succession planting, that's basically where you're planting something in succession. So instead of me planting just green beans one time in my summer, I'm going to plant multiple rounds of green beans. So I will plant green beans in June, in July, and in August. What that does is it staggers my harvest out, and I get harvest all throughout the summer. Now, for those of you who may not be as in a long of a growing season as me, but you still have, let's say your growing season is about 100 days, right? And so think about those crops that are quick and easy. Things like lettuce, that's like a 50-day crop. Things like radishes, a 45-day crop. Things like squash, 50 days. Cucumbers, 50 days. So you could very well do a succession of squash and cucumbers or green beans and have 2 rounds of that. So let's say you started planting in May, then you may plant again in June, and that way you'll have harvest on a continual basis. So in the month of June, in Tennessee, I succession plant in June, July, and in August, again, because I have a long growing season. If your growing season is not as long as mine, I still encourage you to succession plant, but you have to do those things that fit within your window. And so to figure out what your window is just to look up when was your estimated last frost and when is your estimated first frost, and that time in between is your summer growing season, okay? And you can just ask Google or go to thefarmersalmanac.com and look up those 2 things for your zip code, okay? So you will see me this month doing succession planting, and I will go in depth in that video about what I'm succession planting in June and why. But definitely number 2 is succession plant in the month of June. Now let's go on to number 3. Number 3 in the month of June is that I want you to make sure that you are pruning and supporting your tomatoes. I guarantee you most of you are growing tomatoes because that's every gardener's thing, is to grow tomatoes, unless you just absolutely don't like tomatoes or tomato crops or tomato products. And so it's very important if you are growing indeterminate tomatoes. I did a whole video about pruning tomatoes in the month of May. So you can go back, I'll tag it up here, where I talked about pruning tomatoes. I showed you how to prune tomatoes. And I also talked in that video about the difference between indeterminate and determinate tomatoes. For your determinate tomatoes, you would not prune those. But if you're growing indeterminates, which most people are, you want to make sure that you are pruning those and you are supporting those in the month of June and the rest of the summer. So make sure that you have your trellising and your support dialed in. Pruning is so important when it comes to your tomatoes. You want your tomatoes to have airflow. And so for me, I prune the bottom 2 to 3 inches of my plant. And I keep it that way. I keep it open so that airflow can be moving through there. Also, I prune my suckers on my indeterminate tomato plants. Now with suckers, you can do a couple of things. You can compost those. You can also turn those into new tomato plants, because that's exactly what it is. But when you don't prune your suckers, your tomatoes are going to grow wild and they're going to be hard to maintain. It may not feel like it in June, but come July, if you have not pruned and you have not made sure that you have good airflow, you're going to see the effects of that in June. So make sure that you're pruning your tomatoes and that you're supporting them the right way. Now, when it comes to your support, there are many different methods to trellis or support your tomatoes. You can use, we use a string trellising method in our high tunnel, and we use a cattle panel trellis method in our outside garden. And then for the tomatoes that I will plant in the back of my house, I will use stakes, because only in the back of my house will I be planting determinate tomatoes. I don't do any type of indeterminate tomatoes in my raised beds at all, because it's just too hard to manage. But there's also a lower and lean method. There's also stakes that you can buy. Now, I'm not a big fan of stakes for indeterminate tomatoes because, again, they're going to grow indefinitely up to 8-9 feet. And sometimes it's hard to find a trellising or supporting method that is going to take you all the way throughout the summer. And you're going to need something pretty sturdy. So things like bamboo sticks or just regular sticks do not work. And tomato cages do not work for indeterminate tomatoes. Tomato cages are for determinate tomatoes, okay? So make sure that you are pruning, make sure that you are supporting your tomatoes, and you have a plan for that in the month of June. Now let's talk about number 4. Have a plan to mulch and to control your weeds in the month of June. Again, June is the month where everything starts to kick off. June is the month when the temperatures start to rise and you're going to see the massive growth in your garden. For me, June and July are the 2 months of massive growth. In August, I have growth, but not nearly like I do in June and July. And so with growth means weeds, right? Especially if you're not growing in a place where it's covered with landscape fabric, or if you have empty holes or things like that. Stay on top of your weeds as much as possible. I have seen many a gardener, me included, when you get a whole lot of weeds, you just get demotivated, right? You're like, I don't want to spend my time weeding. I want to spend my time planting. I want to spend my time harvesting. And I always say, if I got a weed, I'm not going to garden, right? And so for the most part, I don't deal a lot with weeds. I do deal a lot with weeds, mostly in my backyard garden. And I really believe that's just because when my husband cuts the grass, a lot of the grass seeds, a lot of the weed seeds are coming into the bed. And so I do struggle with weeds more so back here than I do in any of my other spaces. But wherever space you're planting in, make sure that you're staying on top of your weeds and that you're weeding weekly, if not daily. And then also make sure that you are mulching. Mulching is going to help you with weed control. It's going to help you with moisture retention. It's also going to help you with heat regulation. Right? And so mulch is a great barrier and protective kind of like barrier for your soil, right? Soil, of course, obviously can be hot, but in the summertime, you want to retain your moisture as much as possible. And you also want to regulate the temperature around your plants, especially like in my greenhouse, in the hot tunnel, y'all. If it's 90 degrees outside, it's 110 degrees in there. And so I grow a lot of varieties that are specific to the greenhouse. That means that they can deal with high heat and they can deal with high humidity. But I have several crops in there that are not greenhouse varieties. So I need to make sure that I have a watering plan, which we are on drip, but then I also make sure that my beds are covered in mulch. And you can use many different kinds of things. I'll pop a picture up here of what I use. It's in our Amazon shop. It is garden straw. I use this product from Amazon. It works extremely well. You could also use straw from like a local farmer in your area. You can use hay, you can use pine needles, you could use leaves, you can use many different things, whatever you can get your hands on that's going to be weed free, and that is the best choice for you. Then go ahead and use that choice when it comes to mulch and weed control. Now let's talk about the next one, which is number 5. Number 5 is water consistently. Again, the temperatures are going to rise depending on where you live. Some places is going to get much hotter than others. In the South, it gets extremely hot and it gets extremely humid. And so I have to stay on top of the watering. Right now, we have drip. Right now, my drip is coming on for 30 minutes a day. I will soon switch that to where it is dripping an hour every day. Because again, I have a lot of space to cover, and for my outside garden, it is in direct sunlight. Now in my hot tunnel right now, we don't have our shade cloth on. We will put a shade cloth on that will help with the heat and the humidity in there. It won't take it all away, but it will help. But you got to make sure that you're watering consistently. Deep, consistent watering is much better than shallow watering. Like just going out there with your hose pipe and just shallow watering is not going to cut it, especially in the throes of the summer. So have a watering schedule. It's best to water, of course, in the cool of the day. So either early morning or late in the evening, right? You don't want to water in the middle of the day when it's scorching hot. You're going to burn your plants. Now, have I done it before? Absolutely, I have. Especially when I was not on drip. You have to kind of do it when you can. But if you can pick an ideal time and have a set time to water your plants, if you're not on drip, then make sure that you do that, and make sure that you are, especially if you are growing in containers, that you are keeping your containers moist. Containers dry out a lot faster than the ground, a lot. And so with containers, I cannot even imagine that you would not have to water them every day unless your climate is very, very mild. So number 5 is make sure that you're watering consistently and you have a schedule on how to do that. Now let's talk about number 6. Number 6 is you gotta sign up to be part of the pest control. Okay, you remember in school we used to have what do they call it? Not traffic patrol. Was it traffic patrol? I don't know if they had it in your school, but when I was growing up in elementary school, it was like a privilege to be on part of the traffic patrol team. So you would be out there in the morning when people are dropping their kids off. You would have like on this vest or whatever, and you would be monitoring traffic. You would be telling people to stop, opening the door for the kids, all of that stuff. I may be dating myself. They may not even do that anymore. And maybe it wasn't called traffic patrol. It was called something patrol. School patrol. Maybe that's what it was. Put it down in the comments if y'all know what I'm talking about, okay? Let me know I'm not by myself out here in these streets. But anyway, you got to sign up for pest control. And I say pest control because I want you to get your vest. I want you to get serious about this thing, okay? You have to walk your garden every single day. You need to be checking your plants every single day in the summer. Now, obviously, for some people, that is not absolutely realistic because you're working, you may be getting home late, you may have games and things like that. But as much as possible, I want you to be on the lookout for pests. Check not just a visual or cursory look, but look on the underside of your plants. That is where a lot of pest disease happens, or where it begins, is on the bottom. By the time that you see the manifestation of the pest and the damage, it's already been laying eggs on the underside of your leaves, okay? So make sure that you are looking at the underside of your leaves, and as much as possible, be checking that daily, if not every other day, or as often as you can. A lot of times, the sooner that you can jump on something, you can help eradicate it pretty quickly, especially when it comes to like aphids, squash bugs, things like that. If you're growing squash, you're going to get squash bugs. You may even get the squash vine borer, okay? It is inevitable. I have not found a way, especially in my climate, in my area in the South, to get rid of squash bugs or to prevent them from coming. Let me say that. They come every single year. My method of dealing with squash bugs is just to do succession planting, right? I just know I have a long growing season. I get my good wave of squash. And when I see the squash bugs come, I just take my plants out and then I just plant new squash. That is how I do it. Now, this year, I am trying a new method to see if it's going to help alleviate or reduce the risk of squash bugs. I planted in terms of how many squash plants, I think I might have planted maybe, let's just say 10 or 15 squash or zucchini plants when I normally plant like 40 or 50 at one time. So I reduced the number so that I can just do more successions, but then I also kind of spread them out. I only have like 2 together and then another 2 somewhere else, like on another row on the other end of the row. And so I don't have a long row of squash and zucchini all together. I'm going to see if that even helps or works. We'll see. But the key thing is to be looking out for pests. For me, I deal a lot with aphids, squash bugs, and then usually I don't see the hornworm until like late July or August, but that doesn't mean that it can't come early, right? And so be paying attention and looking out for those things. Let me know in the comments what pests that you struggle with, and then maybe if somebody has some tips, they can give you some tips on what they do as well. Now let's move on to the next item on our list, which is number 7. Number 7 is making sure that you have pollinator support in your garden. Make sure that you have pollinators in your garden. You want the bees to come to your garden. I made the mistake of my first garden where I only had vegetables growing. I did not have any herbs. I didn't have any flowers because I was brand new. I didn't know what I was doing. And so I remember my garden started right here in my backyard. I had 4 raised beds to begin with. I had a whole bed of squash, a whole bed of zucchini, a whole bed of cucumbers. And I don't remember what the fourth bed was lemongrass. So I did have an herb and mint. That was it. That was my first garden. I quickly found out that mint you should not put in a raised bed. You should put it in a container. And I was able to quickly get it out and put it in a pot. That lemongrass, though, I did not know that was invasive. And that whole bed was lemongrass. And when I tell you, it was a challenge to get that lemongrass out, I was scarred. I haven't grown lemongrass since then. Plus, I didn't even use it, right? I know that it makes a good tea, but in my mind, I was going to use it for like Thai cuisine, because I love Thai food. Y'all, that lemongrass took over. And my husband, he had to put something on it to get those roots up out of the ground. My point is that my first garden, I had no flowers. I only had those 2 herbs, right? And so my plants, did they grow? Yes. Did I produce food? Yes. Very, very little. You want pollinators. And so if you have not already, make sure that you have flowers in your garden. Now, I love flowers, so it's not hard for me to put flowers in my garden. As a matter of fact, I upped and increased the amount of flowers that I have in my garden this year, like by double, because I love flowers. I love to see the beauty, and I love to make me bouquets to bring in my house every single week during the summer. If you're not a flower person, still put flowers in your garden. At the very least, just go buy those cheap marigolds from Home Depot or Lowe's or Tractor Supply and just put them and sprinkle them in your garden so that you can bring pollinators to your gardens. Other pollinators are sunflowers, which are very easy to grow. A lot of you, if not all of you, have time to grow sunflowers. They take 50 days. Put you some sunflower seeds in the ground. Cosmos, zinnias, all of those are great pollinators for your garden. So make sure that you have pollinators and that you are supporting those, meaning that you're taking a look at those and you're make sure that they're kind of sprinkled out throughout your garden. Now, y'all, we're a little bit over halfway of the list. I told you I have 12 things. We've already gone through 7. I want to know right now at this point in the video, what things are standing out for you? What's coming up for you that you like, you know what, I absolutely need to put that on my list, or I absolutely need to add this because I didn't do that last year and it bit me, right? Let me know in the comments right now what things from number 1 through 7 that you already are committed to. I would love to know. Now let's move on to number 8. So number 8 is pruning your other flowers. And we talked about pruning your tomatoes, and that was specific to tomatoes. But I want you to also prune a couple of other things. Your basil, I want you to pinch that off and prune it. And then also your zinnias. And I want you to make sure that you're deadheading any of your old flowers. Like your marigolds and nasturtiums are going to grow pretty wild. So you want to make sure that you are deadheading that. So let's talk about what deadheading is. Deadheading is really just removing the dead or the spent flowers, right? You can see when you grow a marigold, it's going to grow, it's going to get bushy. It's going to get wild, but then the flowers die. It could be because of the heat, it could be because of moisture, or just because the plant is spent. Go ahead and cut those dead flowers off or the spent flowers off so that it can, 1, look nice, and then number 2, so that it can bloom more. But then when it comes to pruning your zinnias and your basil, let's talk about basil and your zinnias. You want to go, once it has a 2 sets of leaves, you want to go below the leaf and you want to, there is like a node there. So like right above the node, you want to snip right there. And that is pruning your zinnias and your basil. The reason why you want to do that is because you want them to grow more bushy and more abundant versus growing up tall and lanky, okay? And so what I've been doing already with my basil and my zinnias, as I've seen them grow and they have more than 2 sets of leaves, I'm going right below the leaf, right above the leaf node where the leaf and the stem meet, and I am clipping that, right? Even the zinnias that may have a flower that's about to bud, I'm snipping that because it's gonna bud, it's gonna still bud, right? And it's gonna bud even more. You want your basil to kind of bush out and be more abundant versus growing like tall and lanky. Same thing with your zinnias. You're going to get more flowers if you prune. A lot of people think, oh, pruning is bad because I'm taking off some of my plant and oh my goodness, it was just about to produce a flower and now I'm pruning it, or I've cut it down so much. Is it going to come back? Yes, it's going to make it come back even more. The more you prune, the more you're going to actually be able to harvest and to grow. So I wanted to keep that separate from the tomatoes because a lot of times people don't think about those things, but definitely your basil and your zinnias. And for me, I prune my marigolds as well. And then nasturtiums, I prune those as well, just because they get kind of wild. Okay. So that is, the number 8 that we're on right now. Now let's talk about number 9. So number 9 is making sure that you are harvesting regularly, okay? Now for some of you, you like, girl, I got that. That's all I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for my stuff to produce so I can harvest. But I know that sometimes that kind of goes by the wayside because you're so busy planting or you're so busy doing pest control and all of that. But make sure that you're harvesting, because the more that you pull the fruit off, the more that you harvest, the more it's going to signal to the plant to grow, right? It's just like when you grow lettuce, the more you pick it, the more it's going to keep coming. And so isn't it amazing how God has designed the plants and the ecosystem and all that, that the more you take, the more it gives. I just think that is so cool. Like you don't have to, what's the word? You don't have to try to minimize how much you're harvesting. You don't have to minimize how much you're pruning, because the more you cut, the more that's going to come back. There's a lesson in there for somebody right there, right? So make sure that you are harvesting regularly. Now, for me right now, at the first beginning of June, I don't have many summer crops, if any, to harvest. I have some basil that I can harvest, and that's about it when it comes to summer crops. But I have plenty of spring crops that I can still be harvesting, right? You guys saw on a video that I did last week, I did a ton of herbs, right? And my freeze dryer was wide open last week, freeze drying all of my herbs. I have learned to take advantage of the different seasons of gardening, right? The different ebbs and flows. Just because you may have just planted out your summer crops and there's nothing to harvest for the summer, make sure that you don't forget about the stuff that you planted in the spring. Go out there and harvest that stuff. And then as your summer stuff keeps coming in, get a plan to harvest regularly, okay? Have a plan of what you're going to do with the harvest. Know if you're going to freeze it, if you're going to dehydrate it, if you're going to give it away, if you're going to cook it. Be thinking about those things now, because when it hits, okay? Get your supplies. If you need freezer bags, go ahead and get your freezer bags now. Basically what I'm saying is have a plan to harvest, and then also know what you're going to do with it once you harvest it. Number 10 is fertilize your heavy feeders. So for many of us like me, you started planting your summer garden in the month of May. And there are things that are heavy feeders. So for me, I've planted corn, I've planted tomatoes, I've planted peppers, all the things. Corn and tomatoes specifically are heavy feeders. And so I cannot just put my corn in the ground in May and then just expect to harvest it in July and don't fertilize it and don't feed it. It's a heavy nitrogen feeder. Tomatoes are heavy feeders. So for me, I actually fertilize every single week, all of my plants all over my garden. That is my method of how I fertilize. I use a couple of different products. The ones that I use on repeat every single week are Ultra, which is by AgriGrow. And I've talked about this several times. And then also I use a product called Rev, Organic Rev. And so those are the two that I have on repeat every single week. Now, when it comes to specifically, if I wanted to boost up and do a heavy feeding for nitrogen for my tomatoes and my corn, that I use a product by M.I. Gardner, which is liquid nitrogen. I don't remember the name of it. I'll put it up here, but it basically is nitrogen, but it's in a liquid form. And that's what I use to feed those things that are heavy feeders. Okay. So be thinking about that. If you don't fertilize and you're just planting, I want you to get in the habit of fertilizing. My first 2 years gardening, I did not fertilize. One, it was ignorance. I did not know any better. Once I started fertilizing, just a little bit, I saw a difference. Once I started fertilizing every single week, I saw a huge difference. People always comment about how my garden looks, and they always say it looks so green, it looks so lush. I was looking at some pictures of a garden last week, and they had stuff growing, but the color was very muted. It was not dark green. It did not look lush, right? And I knew just from looking at it, I'm like, oh, they're missing nitrogen. They're not fertilizing. The soil is not good. Like, I always say, seeds want to grow. You can throw a seed in the ground and it's going to grow because there is life in the seed. What I try to teach on this channel is how to grow it more abundantly. Okay? I'm never one that says if you don't fertilize, your stuff is not going to grow. I never say that. It's going to grow. But if you want it to grow in abundance, you have to put these principles in place. And one of those things is to fertilize and to feed your soil and your plants, okay? But particularly your heavy feeders, pay attention to those in the month of June. So if you're growing corn, tomatoes, and peppers, those are things that I know for a fact are heavy feeders. Make sure that you're paying attention to that, okay? Number 11 is this, managing your compost, okay? Now, as you are harvesting different things, as you are pruning different things, as you are clipping different things, make sure that you are composting the good stuff and getting rid of the bad stuff. Now, anything that's disease, you don't want to compost. But the things that you're putting away, especially if you don't have like chickens and things like that. Like me, we don't have chickens on our farm. And so I don't have a place to give it to where it's like, you know, completing the circle of life. And so for me, we compost. So make sure that you're managing your compost, especially I do a horrible job of this in the fall just because I'm not outside as much and the temperatures are different. But in the summer, what does that look like when I say manage your compost? I'm making sure that I'm feeding my compost. So I'm giving it a good ratio of browns and greens. I'm making sure that it stays moist enough, so I'm watering it. And then I'm making sure that the things, I have several different kind of composters. The ones that turn, I'm turning it regularly, okay? And I'm checking the temperature. So make sure that you are doing that. I don't know if you can see the shift, but all of a sudden the sun just moved behind me. It's like the sun is coming out on this side, but then when I look ahead, I can see raindrops falling. The weirdest thing. But y'all, we're almost done. Let's see if we can make it. Can we make it? I think we can. Okay, so that's number 11, which is compost management. I told you I was gonna give you 12, but I also have a bonus. But let's go ahead and talk about number 12, which is this. Number 12 is, I talked about harvesting regularly, but for many of us, this month, in the month of June, we are harvesting our garlic and our onions, okay? Especially if you're like in the South and you grew a variety that was like a 90 to 100 day variety. Now for me, I started my onions I did not start them from seed. I planted my onion slips. I get my onion slips from Dixondale Farms. I planted those in March. End of February, 1st of March. I have different schedules depending on where it is. I have onions in several different places in my garden. But it's time now for me this week right here is actually the first week that my onions are coming up to maturity. Okay, so in the month of June, all of my onions will be harvested at some point, and then all of my garlic will be harvested at some point. For my garlic, I've planted it, I think, the end of October, and so for me, I always harvest it in June. Now, if you planted yours in like November, then July may be your month for your garlic. But if you planted it like in September, October, this is usually the month that you're gonna be harvesting your garlic. So don't forget about that. If you have garlic scapes that are just now popping up, depending on what timeline you're on, get your garlic scapes. I just did my garlic scapes, all of them. Last week I had another, the last flush of them, and I freeze dried them and I made them into powder, and it's so good. I'm putting it on everything. And so once you see the garlic scapes, usually you're able to harvest your garlic about 2 to 3 weeks later. So for me, I'll be harvesting my garlic probably in the next couple of weeks, but for my onions, that'll actually get started this week for the ones that I planted first. So that is number 12, I think, which is harvest your onions and garlic. Now, for those of you that maybe did a little bit later, that'll be on your July list and not your June list. And then the last bonus that I want to talk about, number 13 bonus, is, you're not going to believe it, but you need to start thinking about your fall garden. I know, I just talked about the summer garden and it just beginning, but this is the time, believe it or not, that you also have to have a dual mind and start thinking about your fall garden. And so, if nothing else, just take a cursory look at your fall seeds and see what seeds you need to order, right? For the most part, I will start my fall garden seed starting at usually the last week of July is usually when I start. So we still have a little time, but I want you to be thinking about that. And so as I am organizing my seeds, meaning I'm going through all of my summer stuff that I did, I'm only going to keep out the things that I'm succession planting, but I'm going to put all the rest of my other stuff away because my seed station is a mess, right? So that'll be this month. I'm going to clean up my stuff, get all of that taken care of. I will keep out what I'm going to succession plant, but I will take a look at my fall seeds and see and make a list of the things that I need to order, okay? So I encourage you to do the same. That is your bonus, is to think about your fall garden. If you never had a fall garden, I want you to put it on your list to have a fall garden. I do. If you can do summer, you can do fall. Fall is by far the easiest time to do a garden. And so I certainly have resources on that we'll be talking about later on as the summer goes on. But y'all, that is your list. That is your marching orders for the month of June. I want to know, out of the 12 to 13 things that I gave you, which things are you going to commit to? Now, one of the things I always say in every video, I always do this on the first week of the month to give you time to plan, to strategize, and to organize. Most of us cannot do all 13 things in one day. You can't even do it all in 1 week. And so think about the things on the list that apply to you that you know that you need to do and map out a plan. Maybe you do something every day. Maybe you do take a Saturday or a Sunday and you spend 3 or 4 hours in the garden and you knock stuff out. Whatever it is, have a plan and break it up into small chunks, okay? So that is your June garden to-do list. I would love to know in the comments. Let me know if you have questions about anything that I went over. Let me know what you're gonna commit to. And y'all, remember, this is what we've been waiting on. All February, all March, when we were starting seeds, when we were in the house getting cozy. by the fire. We were waiting for this time, and the time is now. I hope that all of you are doing so well. I hope that your gardens are thriving already. Remember, if you have not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Remember, y'all, this is all a journey. Let's do it together. I'll see you next time, friend.